Hi, welcome to another episode of Coffee and HEMA with me, Jamie McKeever, my first for the new year 2025. I today wanted to talk about aging and exercise, and sort of have a bit of a reflection on the demographics of HEMA and kind of how that makes us a bit different from a lot of other sports. So before we get into this, I've been thinking about this a lot, and before I get into the details of what I've been thinking about, I want to point out that I'm probably not as old as you think I am. I'm 39, not in my mid 40s, not in my 50s, as some people seem to think. But nevertheless, I am getting older, right? I'm 40 next year, 40 in less than a year. And it has led to me, being painfully aware of the fact that for most sports, most professional sports people are retiring in their early 30s, right, or mid 30s, and a professional sports person getting to the late 30s for most physical sports, right, is perishing and uncommon. Yet for me, I'm currently the best I've ever been, right, and that's made me think about sort of what makes up performance and what components aging has an effect on within that. And also, I think I'm affected a little bit on sort of why I think people retire at that age, although this is just my own personal opinion. So, if you think about a normal sport, most professional athletes probably started as a kid, right? Whether it was just playing around or in some youth sports team, whatever, they started playing something to do with that sport as a kid, in the most case. And they by the time they become a professional sports person, they've already got 10 years under their belt. By the time they're 30, they've been doing it for 20 plus years, right? Whatever happens to be. And then at some point they peak. And that's the point where I think they start thinking, oh, actually, maybe it's time for me to retire. Right? And that peak is made up of a bunch of different things, right? Because your performance on any given day, or your performance in general, is made up of partially your skill and your training, right? Partially your ability to make choices, tactical choices on the day, whether that's in martial arts or football or whatever, tactical choices, deciding what to do, decision making. Technical skill and decision making are slightly different, but obviously related, and partly made up of your physical abilities, right? And how fast, how strong, whatever you happen to be. And as much as people want to pretend that skill trumps speed and strength, and to some extent it's true, two people of equal skill, if one of them is stronger and faster, they're going to do better, right? It is a component to any physical activity. There's no way of pretending otherwise. So the thing for the common pattern that I just described for most professional athletes is that they peak because actually their skills and technical decision making isn't improving much anymore, because every additional hour of training, 1 hour of training when you've already done 10,000 hours with 100,000 hours, you've been doing it for 30 years, you're probably not increasing that much, right? And as a result, the only thing that's changing is their physical fitness, and their physical fitness is going down, so they kind of reach that peak. HEMA, by contrast, is a relatively old sport in the sense of the demographics of the people in it. Right? Most clubs don't do youth classes. Most people started, certainly not before they were 18. I think it's more common like me to start, 20s. I started late 20s, right? I was 29 when I started, already pushing against sports retirement age. And 10 years in, I'm still gaining things, right? I am still gaining in skill. I'm still gaining in my decision making abilities. So those things are still going up. However, I have noticed that my physical skills, my physical strength, and all that kind of stuff, it's not going down, but it does go down unless I'm careful about it. And I think that's the critical thing. And again, most professional sports people will be doing strength training. They will have a physio, do all this kind of stuff. And what I've realized is the older I get, the more I have to actually consciously think of doing strength training rather than just doing shit tons of swords, which is probably what I did in my early 30s, and got reasonably fit. Now, as I said, I've been thinking about this a lot. I have no intention of retiring soon. I have no intention. A lot of people, stop doing tournaments or they've reduced their tournaments. I have no intention of doing that in the next 5 years unless some life event happens. So, as far as I'm concerned, if I can be competing when I'm 60, I can still be happy. I'm sure I'll be worse, right? And I'm sure other people will be better. But I would like to still be competing when I'm 60. Another 20 years. So we'll see if I can achieve that. But if I want that to happen, and if you want that to happen, the older you get, the more you're going to have to think about actually looking after your body, and that means not just taking rests when you need it, but and not avoiding things that cause you pain, but finding things that can actively work through it. As I mentioned in my last video, I've recently started seeing a physio, and the exercises I've been doing to sort out my tennis elbow have actually proved to be incredibly useful for forearm and shoulder strength, which is actually really useful for the weapons I train less, like rapier, right? That I don't get any sword training for that. And it's made me realize actually, a relatively small amount of specific strength training can go a long way in terms of both reducing your chance of long-term permanent injury and increasing your performance in terms of what you're doing. So I've never been very good at maintaining a routine. Hopefully this time around, I'm saying it now publicly, so I can be publicly shamed if I don't do it. Hopefully this time around I will be better at keeping a routine. But it's really, really important as you get into your late 30s, as you get older, to start thinking about actually what can you do to train specific muscle groups that are useful to prevent both long-term injury and to make sure that your performance is not being held back as your skills increase, as your decision-making increases. Your performance isn't being held back by the fact that you just aren't strong enough or just not fast enough to do the thing that you want. We will see whether this works well, because I unfortunately am still been told to not do sparring, and that means that I will be going into Helsinki at the end of this month, having had 6 weeks off training for Christmas/medical rest, and pretty much going straight into the tournament on the back of that. So we'll see if the strength training I'm doing in the meantime means that I am able to do that, or whether I get destroyed completely. So watch this space for early February. I'll report back then. Thanks for watching.